Hello everyone and welcome to this introductory session on the Spring Boot framework. My name is Manoj Verma and today we are going to learn and deep dive into the Spring framework. I have around 10 years of experience in the industry as a software engineer. I am highly skilled in Java development using Spring framework and the Spring Boot. So if you are a beginner to the programming or looking to switch the career into the software development using the Spring Boot or Spring framework, then this session is for you. Okay. If, however, I understand if some of you might not be from technical background, don't to worry. It's perfectly okay. I will teach you and guide you through all the basic steps and in very easy to understand manner along the way, and I will share my experience and the knowledge how you can grab it faster. Okay, so let's begin. Before we start with the Spring framework, let's go through the prerequisites. I know you are the beginners, but there are still prerequisites for the Spring framework. The basic understanding of Java is essential. The familiarity with object-oriented programming concept will help to grab this framework easily. And basic knowledge of development of HTML, web development using HTML or HTTP methods will be also helpful to better progress in the framework learning. However, if you are not familiar with this concept yet, not to worry. There are a lot of uh, courses or contents available, so you can easily speed it up. Okay, so let's begin. Also, we'll be using the editor. You will need to have familiarity with the code editors like either IntelliJ, Eclipse, Sublime or VS Code. Anything is fine, whichever you are familiar and can use that for the development of the Spring framework. Okay, so let's begin the session. So first, let's understand what is the Spring framework. The word Spring may have a different meaning in different contexts, but here in the Spring framework, it is an open source application framework and inversion of control container for the Java platform. So Spring framework have a lot of tools and modules created under it, like you have the Spring which have the different features like dependency injection. So dependency injection is your design pattern, like how your objects should be created, how your objects dependency should be maintained. So those covered under this design pattern, dependency injection. The aspect oriented programming that we call AOP. So it is another concern of cross-cutting concern of your applications, like your application logging, which don't have to do anything with the business logic. Your business logic is separate, your logging is separate. How your transactions should be maintained in your application. So that's a different module like transaction management. How your web development or the framework is designed, like you can break into model view controller, like layered architecture. So that the Spring framework suggests. Okay, and it's highly flexible. Okay, so it can be integrated with the other frameworks easily. So as we see, the Spring framework makes the Java programming development of the application quite easier and quicker and safer for everybody. So Spring mostly focus on the speed, simplicity and productivity. That's why it's very popular framework in the development, and it's very highly and very easy to learn also. Okay, so now you can say the Spring framework is everywhere. You see the Netflix uses the your Netflix uses the Spring framework on their applications. Your content sharing, your data flow, your event-based data, all can be managed by the application Spring framework. Microsoft, Google, Azure, all their products built and developed on the Spring framework. So it's highly and very community support is available for the Spring framework. And the history of Spring framework is quite long. It's like Spring Framework was developed in around 2002, and now still a 25-year old, and there are a lot of community supports available. Yeah. So let's move next. So hope this give you the what is the Spring Framework. It's a open source application framework, and it work on the IOC container. Let's see what is the IOC. Okay, so definition of IOC, we can see like inversion of control is a design principle in which control of object creation and management is transferred from application code to container framework. So what does it mean? So it's trying to like instead of application manager its object, we ask container to manage the, or the framework itself will manage the objects in your application. So you don't have to worry about how your object dependency should maintain. It's all maintained by the dependency injection. You don't have to create dependency based on the object. All those object dependency will be handled by the Spring framework. Okay, so that's why dependency injection. So dependency injection is again like it's a design pattern which implement the IOC in the Spring framework. So IOC is a design principle, and dependency injection is its design pattern which implement the IOC. The advantage of this design injection is like it helps to decouple the code. It increases the flexibility. So that's the two features which makes Spring more flexible and easy to test. Yeah. So let's move next. Okay. So after knowing the what is Spring framework, now it's a Spring Boot. What is a Spring Boot? So Spring Boot came like was developed around 2012 or 2014. So Spring framework was quite old enough that time, but in the Spring framework, as a developer, you need to configure the bin, you need to maintain the bin.xml, and you need to still tell these are the things you need to configure for me. But in the Spring Boot, it make even very much easier for developers. So the Spring Boot is like it's quite self-understand, or something like you need to deploy a web application, you need a server. So then you need to set up a server or something, but in Spring Boot your server is embedded. So it's very simplify your development. You what based on dependency, it follow the opinionated approach. So let's say you have what opinionated approach means. You need to connect to database, right? You just add the dependency of the database in your dependencies in your pom.xml, and then Spring Boot will automatically know, oh, I need to create a data source. So based on the dependency understanding, it auto configure the object for you. So that's how it makes the development quite fast, and it's quite easy to understand. Like save your quite efforts in configurations and all and everything. You don't have to set up the server. Your application will start with the default configuration. Your properties will be loaded automatically. You don't have to load any properties. Whatever properties you put under resources will be available in the application. So quite easy and quite faster. That's the Spring Boot framework do. So what Boot framework is an open source framework that make easy to standalone application and production grade Spring based application. So what are the application created by using Spring Boot? It's already production ready. You can easily go and deploy on the single server because it have inbuilt server. You don't have to create server and you just run in your production environment easily. Okay, so now let's see the analogy how Spring Boot. You can think of the real-time example of I have to share. So Spring Boot is like ready to eat meal. Okay, so you have pre-measured tools, so like provide everything pre-measured kit. We have like in the market we get the ready to eat noodles, right? So you bring the noodles, you add the noodle masala and all, you just boil it and your noodle is ready to eat. Same way Spring Boot, you add the dependencies and just add your business logic and your application ready to eat, ready for your production environment. Okay, so this like save your time and effort, right? Okay, so now we'll create a one hello demo applications and we'll see how fast we can create the application. So I will use the Spring initializer. Spring Initializer is the web page created by the like Spring team. So there you can select the dependencies, what dependencies, and it will generate your boilerplate code. So you don't have to create project manually. All your project will be created in the proper structure with the required dependencies, and you can just load into your editor and it will be ready to start your application. Okay, so let's build a simple application. So basically, to build an application we need to use the Spring Boot annotation. So whenever we write a main application, main method, right, the main class should be annotated with the Spring Boot application, so your framework knows, okay, this is the Spring Boot application, and then create a REST API endpoint and run the application. So I will first, let's go to the browser and I open the Spring Boot initializer. Okay, so this Spring Boot initializer is a quick start where you can start your Spring Boot application. Okay, so you have to select the language, like it support the multiple language like Kotlin, Groovy and Java. So we are mostly writing the Java based application. And the build tool, we're going to use the Maven. The other options available for build tool like your Gradle or Groovy. Okay, for Java we will be using the Maven, and we're going to use the 3.4.1 version. You can use the latest version also. The supporting, we will be packaging our application as a jar, and the group name demo, and like it's a demo project, so what are the package name or group name for your application or company, you follow that one, you give the package name. Okay, and we are selecting the Java version 17, so make sure you have the Java 17 installed and you have the Maven configured your Java environment or Java homes, so you can build the application locally. Okay, so now I will add the dependency web, as we just want to create the REST endpoint and build the service. So if you see this dependency already describe what we can do, it will bring, like, this is the starter dependency which have all dependent libraries required already. So we need a RESTful, using this dependency we can create an MVC application which have embedded Tomcat as the embedded container, so we don't have to install anything. Okay, so if you select this and generate, okay, so it will you can download the zip file, as I already have the demo application, so I will open in my editor. Okay, so you download the zip file and extract it. This demo application will be like having the folder structure like this, so I will open in my editor. Okay, so I am using the IntelliJ. So IntelliJ editors, let me walk you through the project structure. Okay, so this is the pom.xml. As you can see, your Java version 17, your Maven compiler and Maven version is using the Java 17. So this is your project structure, pom.example, your demo, 0.01 version, and what are the descriptions you want to give. So this is the starter dependency. If you see, it's the starter. So if you internally, it have all other dependencies. If you see under the libraries, all libraries will automatically pulled by this starter dependency. You don't have to write anything. Okay, all JUnit, everything will comes bundled with this one. So it having the Spring Boot 3.1 auto configuration, logging library, test auto, everything, AOP, beans, web MVC. So we don't have to add anything, all just by adding one dependency everything is pulled by the Spring framework. Okay, so POM basically your project object model, which is the XML file and used by your build tool Maven, and it should be present on the top directory. So once you run Maven clean install, it will build your jar. So this jar you can go ahead and deploy in any environment. Okay, this jar you can deploy to production environment, it will work as it is. Okay, so this is how your application is production ready. So if you see in the application, how do we annotate the application to tell the this is the Spring Boot application. So this is the annotations telling that my this class is the main class, and it should be annotated with the Spring Boot application. So that's how identify the Spring Boot applications. Another annotations should be used enable auto configurations. So all the configurations will be automatically configured for you. We don't have to write any configure the manually or something. It will be auto configured. So what it do, it auto scan, like there's another annotations in the Spring Boot, but this is the beginner's demo, so we'll not discuss more about that. But the annotations like component scan, service, repository, controller, rest controller, get mapping, post mapping, get methods, all those annotations will really helpful to create the application quite fast. So we want to create a one REST service endpoint. So I will be using the REST controller. Okay, so this REST controller, like I put under the same package, but if you follow the layered architecture, then better we create a one controller, then we create a service, then we create a database access layer. So this how we follow the layered architecture. So I have annotated my service with the hello endpoint, and then my service will be returning the hello Spring Boot learning. Okay, so if you run this application, main application, you will just click and start the application. Okay, already running. Yeah, so if you see your application will be automatically starting the Tomcat server. It will be running on this port, and your context will be loaded hello world. Okay, so if you go on the browser and we just type here you got the response. Quite fast, right? So this is how fast you can develop the service. Yeah, this is just a demo, but in the microservices of production, like you develop one service for your application and you can easily go and test it. So you don't have to set up your test environment or something for the like quite easy to do POC and all. So those where the microservice can helpful, and you can use the Spring Boot for that purpose. And yeah, so that's how this is the simple demo for the, using the Spring Boot framework with the REST service. Okay, yeah, so we run the demo. You can go and see, and you will see something hello Spring Boot. So now the task for you, like in the real world where the Spring Boot is being used. So Spring Boot, as I mentioned, used by Microsoft, Google, Netflix, all it's highly used by major companies. So the your all majority of the enterprise applications like web applications all use the Spring framework or the Spring Boot framework. The APIs of microservice development recently is highly mostly used by the Spring Boot. All database integrations you can use the Spring Boot. So the example like for practice, you can use the library management system. You can create a library management system using the Spring framework, or you can create a service which have the perform the code operations like allow to add the books to the library, delete the books, update the books, and all those code operations you can perform using the API. Okay, so that's how you can use the Spring framework. Now, as your first steps, you visit the Spring initializer, generate the startup project, and open an IDE and start coding. Uh, yeah, so start small and experiment and see how Spring Boot can simplify your Java development. Happy coding and thank you.